We've talked about alternate Spider folks and heroes, but now it's time to turn the spotlight on some of our favorite villains from the Spider multiverse. Which villains do you most want to see in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1? Let us know in those comments, and let's jump in. Number 10. Alchemax. Alchemax is the villainous corporation that exists in the alternate future of 2099, Earth 928. It is where Miguel O'Hara once worked and came up with the procedure that would ultimately grant him his powers. He was a brilliant geneticist that worked for Alchemax, but didn't like that he was being pressured to rush along his research and begin trials that he believed were unethical. When Miguel tried to leave Alchemax after a test subject died from the procedure, the CEO, Tyler Stone, attempted to prevent him from leaving by getting him addicted to a drug only Alchemax produced, called Rapture, which is also apparently a highly addictive substance, so not so great for Miguel. Fortunately, Miguel would end up curing himself, getting spider-like powers, and end up escaping Alchemax, at least for the time being. Alchemax and Stone, however, weren't willing to let him escape so easily, and they would continue to pursue him. It's possible Alchemax could end up being the main big bad of it all in Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, and maybe Part 2, and however many other parts there will be. Number 9. Vulture. While I imagine we will get to see some of Miguel O'Hara's villains as we head to the future of 2099, I would also love it if we get to meet some of Spider-Man Noir's as well. In the reality of the Noirverse, Earth 90214, Vulture is actually a terrifying villain who Spider-Man Noir also has a pretty personal vendetta against. In that reality, Vulture is the one who is personally responsible for killing Peter's Uncle Ben. He was ordered by the Green Goblin of the Noirverse to do this, but still, he was ultimately the one responsible. Vulture here is a carnival geek. That is a person who travels around with a carnival and, not having any particular skill sets of their own, usually performs by biting the heads off of live animals. Vulture went down this road and ended up with a very acquired taste for human flesh. As such, he devoured Peter's Uncle Ben. Later on, Spider-Man Noir would kill the Vulture for what he'd done, when he later attempted to kill his Aunt May. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more amazing multiversal villains and just, spider villains in general, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. And let us know if there's anyone in particular you want to learn more about. Number 8. The Lizard. The Lizard of Earth 65 is the version we are talking about here. On Earth 65, the same reality that Spider-Gwen hails from in the comics, Lizard is actually none other than Peter Parker. Peter Parker is best friends with Gwen Stacy, and after she becomes the spider-like superpowered hero in this reality, in his place, he wants nothing more than to be like her. He does not know, of course, that this hero, his hero, is actually his friend Gwen. Done with being bullied and having to have Gwen stick up for him as well, he creates a serum which he uses on himself. It gives him power, but it also turns him into the monster and villain known as Lizard, as his reptile self takes over. The Lizard ends up dying when he comes up against Spider-Gwen, and is only then revealed to be Peter Parker, Gwen's best friend. He dies in her arms. It's all pretty tragic. We saw an allusion to this part of Gwen and Peter's stories from Earth 65 in Gwen's origin flashback in Into the Spider-Verse. But what if Peter didn't die? What if he's still alive and he somehow returns? That would be intense for Gwen to deal with. Perhaps he's an alternate of this alternate who is still alive, or perhaps, like I said, the Lizard didn't really die in Gwen's universe. There are multiple approaches you could take here. I personally would love to see him come back because I just would love to see their dynamic. Number 7. Ultimatum. Ultimatum is actually an alternate and evil version of Miles Morales in the comics, who hails from the main continuity of Earth 616. You see, in the comics, Miles is actually not from the main continuity, not originally, but instead from an alternate universe, the universe of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate Universe, because that was the line of comics that it was a part of. The Ultimates themselves were actually a superhero team akin to Earth 616's Avengers. On Earth 616, Miles Morales was a criminal who ended up traveling for a time to Earth 1610. When he returned home to Earth 616, he learned that Miles Morales of 1610 was also residing there. Resentful of the other Miles Morales, Spider-Man, and wanting him out of his way, he aimed to send Miles and his family back to their home reality of Earth 1610, against their will, obviously. Fortunately, Miles and his uncle, Aaron Davis, aka Prowler, who also wound up resurrected and on Earth 616, foiled the plot of Ultimatum, defeating him, at least for for now. Miles is such a sweetheart in the animated Spiderverse reality, so I'd really love to see him fight against someone who is very much his opposite. I definitely want to see Miles take on his evil version. Number 6. Peter Parker 2099. In an alternate 2099 future, not the same reality that Miguel is from, Peter Parker actually becomes the CEO of Alchemax, the villainous corporation that Spider-Man 2099 once worked for. In this reality, Peter Parker was still Spider-Man, but allowed the public to believe that the hero was dead. Retired from heroics, he became the CEO of Alchemax, working sort of in secret, because you know, he's supposed to be dead. His plan was to fix his past mistakes and bring back all of those people whom he couldn't save during his time as Spider-Man. This alternate version of Peter also has a prolonged lifespan due to fancy future anti-aging technology, so that's how he's still alive, by the way. He attempts to get Miguel from the alternate 2099 reality, which is I guess really the main 2099 reality, and his own younger self to join him, but both refuse, prompting 2099 Peter to fight Miguel. This evil version of Spider-Man I think could fit well into Across the Spider-Verse as a main antagonist, considering his whole plot involves rewriting reality, which you know could potentially affect and threaten the entire multiverse. 2099 Peter Parker comes from the Spider-Man video game Edge of Time, where he was revealed as the main antagonist. Or well, he ended up kind of being the main antagonist I guess at the end of the game. Also, while Edge of Time wasn't well received, and I know that, the story in general was praised. And I think the story is pretty cool, so yeah, that's just my 2 cents. Number 5. Superior Spider-Man. Superior Spider-Man is a version of Spider-Man who is also Dr. Otto Octavius. Let me explain. Back in the 616 comic book continuity, Otto is basically dying and manages to trick Peter into a body swap scenario. While Peter is trapped inside Otto's failing body and dies, Otto lives on in Peter's body as Spider-Man. Superior Spider-Man to be exact, because you know, this is Otto, so he's like, I'm gonna be the best Spider-Man ever. Peter would eventually return, and Otto would also go back to his usual Doc Ock appearance and his hijinks, but for a time, he was the Spider-Man of the 616 reality. He's done good and bad things before in the comics, and ended up accidentally bringing back the Inheritors after they were defeated the first time in Spiderverse. Oops. Superior Spider-Man, while known for being a villain, is also like an anti-hero, so we could really see him in either light were he to show up in Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. But yeah, he's been a villain and a hero, so I figured I could still count him as a villain for this list. I just really want Superior Spider-Man. I think a lot of us do. Number 4. Army of Doc Ocks. Why stop at 1? Or I guess 2 Doc Ocks when we could have a whole army of them, right? I mean, there isn't just Doc Ock, Otto Octavius somewhere out there. We also have Olivia Liv, Octavius's version, and we could have Superior Spider-Man as well. There are lots of cool alternates of Otto out in the multiverse that we could meet in Across the Spider-Verse, and Doc Ock is such a powerful and interesting villain that we could have a whole army of them to face. I'm not sure what the motivation would be, or like who would ultimately be the Doc Ock in charge, the like head Doc Ock, maybe Superior, but I'm sure when all those octopi put their minds and I guess their tentacles together, they could come up with some pretty ingenious schemes. Also, I feel like now that I said put their tentacles together, I'm like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I said it. And you know what? Sometimes you gotta be like all tentacles in and then get your mind out of the gutter. Number 3. The Spider. The Spider is one of the worst alternate versions of Spider-Man we've ever met. He is super evil and is basically a version of Peter Parker that is combined with Cletus Cassidy. This alternate version of Peter Parker has red hair and was born a sociopath, because I guess everyone that has red hair is a sociopath. I don't know. I don't understand that connection, but you know, people with red hair, apparently they have no souls. He possesses a dark sense of humor and enjoys causing pain to others. He first showed up in the Exile series and hails from Earth 15. Like Carnage on Earth 616, he revels in hurting others. He possesses a symbiote very similar to Carnage, although it is actually known as the Spider symbiote instead of the Carnage symbiote in this reality. What could be cooler than seeing Miles and the rest of the Spider Army take on an alternate and evil version of Peter Parker? Also, Let There Be Carnage did well at the box office, right? I'm pretty sure it did. So wouldn't it make sense to have some kind of version of Carnage show up here? And this is like both. It's like a Spidey and a Carnage together. Number 2. Morlun. I'm actually a really big fan of Morlun, even though I feel like he's not really everybody's cup of tea. He's my cup of tea. I like like the fact that he's a Victorian-style energy vampire from an alternate past. Morlun feeds on the energy of spider totems, hunting them down and feeding off of them. He is extremely powerful by himself and is sometimes not even just a one energy vampire kind of deal. So sometimes if you're facing Morlun, it's not just Morlun you're facing. Morlun is proven to be a hard foe to beat, especially because he rarely stays dead for long and usually shows back up to torment Spider-Man and taunt him, often threatening that he will be his end. Morlun is also the guy who ate Spider-Man's eye that one time when he was on the brink of death, plagued by a mysterious ailment. Number 1. The Inheritors. The Inheritors are the rest of Morlun's crew and family. They are a powerful energy vampire clan which hunt down various totems and consume them. Because yeah, there aren't just spider totems out there apparently, there's lots of other totems. Spider totems, by the way, if you're confused by what that means, are basically spider folks from across the multiverse who are destined to end up being connected to the spirit of the spider, either possessing powers related to spiders or some other important connection, which generally gives them purpose in their life. The Inheritors ended up getting control over the Master Weaver, thereby turning him into an enemy of the spider totems, even though that wasn't his intended purpose to begin with. They used the Master Weaver's knowledge and power to travel the multiverse and hunt down spider totems within it. The Inheritors are generally led by Solus or Morlun, and their members have included Verna, Genix, Karn, Bora, Brix, Dora, Deimos, Malos, Mortia, Namura, and Thanos. And I probably said some of those wrong, so sorry about that. Like Morlun, they are also from the alternate reality of 001. And in case you didn't know, the Inheritors were kind of like the main thing when we had Spiderverse in the comics and then Spider-Geddon. So it would make sense that they would show up at some point in these movies. Please, I would like to see it. Maybe I'm the only one? I don't know. Who are your favorite multiversal Spider-Man villains? Which do you want to learn more about? What Spider-Man villains from the main continuity do you love and hope to see more alternates of? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerdin'. I am your host Amanda McKnight. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.